In the last lesson, we covered syntax. In this lesson, we're going to cover variables. Variables in PHP are very similar to variables in algebraic functions. So for instance, in algebra, if you have x plus 1 equals 5, then x is going to be equal to 4. PHP is similar. So if I do $x equals 5, now keep in mind, variables in PHP are defined by typing a dollar and then something after the dollar. You will find a few things in PHP that do start with a dollar but are not variables. For instance, we have cookies, files, get, post, request, and we'll get into some of these later. But for right now, if you see a dollar, you know it's probably a variable. So let's do a little math. $x equals 5. We'll do $y equals 2. And we'll echo. Remember, echo outputs to the user's screen. So echo $x plus $y. We're going to save that, put it to the site, and we get 7. You can use other algebraic functions such as multiplication, division, and subtraction. Now remember, in a previous video we talked about the period. Well, in this one we can put a period between these two variables, and in this case we should expect the 5 to be outputted and the 2 to be outputted. But it's going to look like 52. This is not the number 52. This is a 5 and a 2 separately. We can see this even more so if we stick a string in the middle and do an HTML break. Now up to this point, we've only shown numbers. PHP is a great language because you don't have to define your own data types. A data type is what kind of variable it is. So for instance, in this case, PHP knows that our x and our y are what's called int variables. If it has a decimal place, it could be what's called a float, decimal, or double. But in this case, we want to define a string. Let's go down here and we'll do a variable called my name, and we'll name it Michael. Then below this, we're going to go echo my name is. We're going to do a space, close the quotations, and type $my name. And don't forget to end it with a semicolon. Let's see what that outputs. My name is Michael. Notice the 2 is still there because we haven't done any line breaks between this y and my name. But I could put a line break here, and I'll get it on the next line. Now, going back to math. Doing math in PHP doesn't necessarily look just as similar as it does in algebra. For instance, in algebra, if I had 5 equals 5 plus 2, well, that would be a false statement. However, in PHP, we can have x equals $x plus $y. This is because in PHP, we don't split things at the equal sign, saying that the stuff on the left side of the equal sign is always equal to the stuff on the right-hand side of the equal sign. What we're saying is set this variable equal to this variable. Just a note for the future, and we'll get into this later, if you want to do a true equals, like algebraic equals, you actually have to use 2 equal signs. So if I was to say $x equals $x, that would return true. And that's called a Boolean statement, or a data type of Boolean, or true or false. That's going a little more advanced than we're going to do in this lesson. We're going to show one more thing regarding variables and how they're structured throughout code. So here we've defined an x, and I'm going to go ahead and write a quick function. We will get into functions later, so don't be overwhelmed on this one. So I've defined my function here. I'm going to go ahead and call the function. And we'll go down here in just a minute. So in here, I'm going to type in $y equals 3 or 4. And below the hello world, I'm going to say echo x equals, I'm going to put my period to join it, and I'm going to say $x. Then I'm going to echo a line break just so we can see a separation. And then we'll echo y equals, and then $y. Now when we submit this, we're going to get an error. See right here it says undefined variable of y. Similarly, if I go inside of here and I type in echo $x, I'll get another error. Undefined variable of x. Let me enlarge that a little bit so you can see it. So undefined variable of x and undefined variable of y. That's because you can't inherently pass a variable that's outside of a function into a function. And you can't inherently pass a variable that's inside a function outside a function. So the way we fix this is we define something called a global variable. So in this case, I'm going to do global of $x and $y. This $x is going to reference the x outside of the function. This $y will set the global variable of y, which we will then define right here as 4. So now when we output, we should see echo x, so it should show 5 on the screen. And then down right next to it, because we're not doing any line breaks, it'll say 5x equals 5. Then it'll do a line break, and it'll say y equals 4. So let's test it and see if that's really what comes out. 5x equals 5 and y equals 4. That's because we've defined that global variable. One last wrap-up note on variables. If we're going to echo in double quotes, this is number $y. Notice that we've put the $y inside of a string that's in double quotes. This is kind of shorthand because in this we'll actually expect it to say this is, and then number, and then the actual variable of what y is equal to. So let's check that. So this is number 4. But watch what happens if we change the double quotes to single quotes. Now we say this is number $y. The reason is because single quotes say this is exactly what I want to output, while double quotes allow dynamic content to be injected. The other element I'd like to look at, we mentioned earlier $x equals $x plus 1. You can say the same thing in shorthand by saying $x plus equals 1. So occasionally you might see me using this syntax as opposed to this longhand, but they do the exact same thing. So in this video we got into a few more advanced features of PHP. We will deal with functions quite a bit later, but this gave you a bit of an introduction on how functions work and how to pass variables in and out of functions.